Good morning, it's another day, and as you can hear, there is machinery in the driveway. So the Extreme Contracting have come back with a smaller boring machine and also with a little digger to complete the installation of the conduit. Sorry if I sound slightly out of breath, I've been huffing and puffing up and down the driveway. So I'll get out of their way and I'll record some of what they're doing with the time lapse and various other things, see how it goes. It is, by the way, cracker of a day. They paused at the top of the drive to remove the drill bit from the front of the machine to make it easier to negotiate the machine around between the house and the trees and fence. They also switched to the more experienced digger driver as the novice wasn't confident to navigate the digger around the tricky bit. The day before they came, Kathy and I had removed all the plants and bulbs from the garden on the left here in the corner, so that they were not destroyed. Kathy decided that as this is going to be an ongoing path of destruction, that she would replant everything somewhere else. It was very tight getting the boring machine around the corner, and both the kowhai tree and the rose around the corner suffered some superficial damage. To make things a little easier, they turned the machine around and backed it in. This not only made it easier to squeeze around the corner, but it meant that it was facing the right direction to bore back up the hill once they had got to the other end. This machine is 6 meters long, so I knew that it would have been really tight to try and turn it around down there, so I let them know. I knew this because the retaining boards I put on the fence are 6 meters long, and I had found that there wasn't quite enough distance between the compost bin and the fence by the steps going up to the next door to turn the retaining board around. Turning the machine around here also meant that the ground down there wasn't immediately going to be chewed up with the tracks as the machine swiveled around. As you will see, that would have been a little consequence by the end of the day. The reason I went over to help at this point is because the driver can't see much at all as he is behind the machine. He couldn't see either the side close to the house or the back on the left side. As I said, we got through with a bit of manipulation of the tree and minor scuffs to the bark. The first job with the digger was to remove the 2 shed piles from the ground. The concrete around the piles was also broken to some extent in this process, which was great as it made my job of removing the concrete that much easier later in the day. They wanted the piles removed so that they could position the boring machine as far back as possible. You will see as things progress that didn't help a huge amount, but it was a good idea at the time nonetheless. Because of the slope of the ground and the amount of thrust that the machine produces, there was a danger of the machine being pushed over the bank. To overcome this issue as best they could, they put a chain between the boring machine and the digger, and the blade of the digger dug into the ground to hold it in place. They use a device that uses a transponder to tell them where the end of the drill bit is. As the bit travels along, the readouts tell them what depth the bit is at, direction, and also how hot it is. These are important, and sometimes they have to stop to allow the bit to cool down. That stack of horizontal lines you can see on the other side of the boring machine are lengths of pipe, threaded at each end, male one end, female at the other. Each time you see the carrier go back and forth, another length of pipe is being added to or removed from the drill. This is much the same as an oil rig. They just use bigger drill bits. They used a headset radio to communicate between the man on the machine and the one with the transponder detector, so that they can tell him where to go, up, down, whatever. As I have explained previously, there is about 600mm or 2 feet of topsoil and clay, and then there is a clay pan which is rock hard. The depth of the pan varies from about 200 to 600 millimeter. The conduits need to be at least a bit further down than the top of the clay pan, which means they need to drill through the pan, travel up to the section and then move back up through the pan. Alternatively, at the top end they can dig down through the clay pan to where the drill is. More on that later. At this point, because they are hitting the clay pan at a very low angle, the drill bit is not able to bite into it. The bit is being diverted along the top of the pan. They pulled the drill back out and raised the rear of the boring machine to try and achieve a higher attack angle for the drill. I had previously told them if they needed any bits of wood that they could help themselves to what was under the deck. It's a bit unfortunate that I wasn't there at this point, otherwise I would have offered some larger sized piles that I have in the wood rack, which would have been better than the broken bits of concrete they used. You can see that the machine has hydraulic lifters under the rear, but it didn't have much substance to push down on here, and hence the timber and that they're putting underneath. At the front end they also dug out some of the ground where the drill is entering the ground, so that they could use the digger bucket to push down on the drill bit, just to try and get it to bite better. Earlier in the day I had removed the old concrete posts to my trailer that were behind where the shed was, so that I could take it away to be crushed. At that time I couldn't deal with the concrete that had been around the piles, as they had used it to put under the rear of the machine. Now that they have moved forward a bit, I broke up the concrete from the piles and put that on the trailer as well. You may think it was a bit dangerous to be working this close behind the machine, but I was keeping a close eye on proceedings, and also there was one of the workers there watching as well. By this stage of proceedings, they had penetrated down through the clay pan and managed to bore up to the other end. They had several shots at it, but were having difficulty getting the drill to come back up near the surface. From memory, the closest they managed was 1.8 meters below ground level, which is way too far down. You can see here there is a bit of water and slurry starting to pond at the point of entry of the drill. In part this is because the drill has been in and out a few times, and each time it is brought back a reasonable amount of water comes out with it. You can see from the shadows that the sun on the lens that we're getting near the end of the day. They abandoned their efforts for the day not too long after this, and then came to the fun part of trying to get the boring machine back up the slope and onto the path so that they could get it out. Because of all the water, the ground was now both very soft and slippery, and there was just no way the machine could claw its way back up the slope. With the assistance of the digger and quite a bit of manoeuvring of both machines back and forth, they managed to get the boring machine up onto the path between the houses, so that it could then travel the rest of the way without further assistance. As an aside, back when they had the big machine down the bottom, the drive a week or so ago, I think I told you that it ended up being straddled on the curb at the end of the day. But the reason it was late arriving in the morning was that it had become stuck down a steep slope in the Esk Hills, and apparently it had been quite a mission to retrieve it from there. You can no doubt hear the machine still leaving, the boring machine. It would probably be a reasonable assessment to say they didn't have a very successful day. As I explained earlier, things are a little complicated as far as trying to get it to do what they want it to do. But we've ended up with quite the mess here, as you can see. You can probably see the pipe just there still. It hasn't got any further than it was, but there have been several attempts to bore all the way up, but those have failed to come out at the other end. So they've gone home for the night, and they will be back tomorrow without the boring machine, and they have a plan to hopefully get the pipes installed. We shall see. We do have quite the mess here now. That's it for today. It is quite a splendid evening, and I suspect we may even, I don't think we will get a frost up here, but it will be chilly in the morning. Unfortunately, it is then supposed to become cloudy as the day goes on and rain later, which we don't really need, but we're not complaining. See you later. You know how when cows wander around paddocks and they leave behind a trail of cow pats? Well, when a boring machine goes back down the drive, I have already cleaned up the mess up here, but as you go down here, that's what they leave behind. So, unlike cows, I need to pick up all of what's been left behind. Good afternoon. It is now the weekend, Sunday actually, and on Friday the men trying to put the conduit in came and had a long and frustrating day, really. Let me explain. So on Thursday, as you would have seen previously, they had the boring machine here and tried to bore from where the conduit currently finishes up to the top where it needs to go to, and it wasn't really working well. I think I'll do a little diagram and record that and show you what they're trying to achieve and why it's not that straightforward. At the end of that day, they, with some difficulty, extricated the boring machine and took that away and just left the digger here, with the plan that on Friday they would dig further down at the top end by hand and try and find where the boring machine had got to, so that they could then put the conduit in. Alas, it didn't work out so well, and so now what we have is a bit of a messy quagmire down here. So there you can see the conduits still in the ground where they were, and there is more clay here now, and I'll show you where that's come from in a minute. But this is where they were trying to enter with the boring machine to get up to the top up here, and we tried a number of different, whoops, I'm falling over here, lack of traction, So they had fiberglass rods, and then at one point I got out my water blaster for them with the drain cleaning nozzle on the end of it to try and run that down in the hope that it would pull its way through. But that didn't work, so then we tried that from the bottom and that didn't work either, and by that time it was nearly 5 o'clock. So they gathered up all their bits except for the digger and went home to have a think about it. But we now have almost a Tomo at this top end, so that's a good 1.8 meters deep that they've dug down there. And when you put water in at this end, it does come out down at the hole down the bottom there, but not able to get anything solid through. So on Friday night we had about 10 mils of rain, and then from Saturday morning through until about lunchtime today we had close to 50 mils of rain, and we're supposed to have more tonight, tomorrow, and then for it to ease off a bit on Tuesday. So I won't be surprised if they don't come tomorrow, and then we'll try and figure out a way of getting something sorted. But that's where it's up to. The wetness is certainly not helping the cause, but it's what we have to deal with, and so we'll see how progress goes this week. Alrighty, I'll see you another day. Bye. Despite what it looks like on the video, it's nearly dark, very close to dark, and as you can tell I've got my wet weather gear on. It was more actually anti-mud gear because I've been trying to help Scott this afternoon, but it's fair to say we haven't really made any progress on getting these conduits in. So I'll need to go closer because there's just not enough light. So this was the entry point for the drill, and the conduits that have come up the hill are back over here still. I'm going to lose my boots if I'm not careful. And yeah, so very quick update, not really any progress. We've tried several things. Tried a hose on a rod, tried the water blaster through the green conduit and trying to push that through, but couldn't even get that in at the top end, which is very strange considering that the drill has gone up there. I think the plan tomorrow is to try and maybe get a more powerful water blaster or a better drain cleaning option. Maybe even a transponder that we can send up there to see where we're going, or where he's going, or whatever. So I'll give you another update tomorrow. Bye for now. Good morning. It is a very foggy, damp morning. I was talking to somebody yesterday who has a young son. Her young son had come in and said, "Mum, it's really froggy outside this morning." After some time she ascertained that he meant foggy, but froggy works. It is quite damp. Now a couple of days have elapsed since I last spoke to you, and yesterday I think came to an agreement with the people trying to put the conduit in the ground that we would withdraw from the battle at this point and come back to fight another day. The biggest issue really is that it is just so wet that it's pretty much impossible to do anything with ground. I'll show you. You can see here it is just a muddy, soggy mess. And that opening video clip was of the hole that has been dug up the other end here. And so the thought is to leave things for several months, probably, where are we now? Almost July, so July, August, September. Depending on how quickly it dries out, maybe later September, early October, they will come back with the boring machine and have another shot at it via a different route. So, and hopefully they can actually hit this hole, which, as you saw, is approximately 1.7 meters deep, and so hopefully they can hit that without too much drama. So that's where things are up to on that front. Can't really add much to it. It just became an exercise in futility trying to get through there at the moment. So best to abandon it at this point. There's not an immediate urgency to have the conduit in, to get the cable in, because we can't really put the cable in and do all of that but until we have all the legal side of the easements sorted out, and that's going to take some months. So that's where we're up to on that front. We're forecast to have about another 40 mils of rain in the 12 hours following 3 p.m. this afternoon, and then more Saturday night, Sunday, I think, today being Wednesday, so it might be Friday, Saturday, I can't remember. Anyway, more rain. Between now and when they return later in the year, I will actually cover this big hole here with a reasonably substantial cover so that we can use this path and so that it's not a danger to anybody. I won't do that in the next few days just because it is going to be so wet, but I've got these gates over it in the meantime so that nobody can fall in there, and so that will just make that safe for those intervening months. Alright, I think that this is probably the end of this video, and so not a tremendously entertaining one, I'd have to say, but you can see the steps that we're making or not making, and we'll come back. I won't guarantee that it'll be next week. It will just depend on what else I can get done. I do need to get on and do the sides for the trailer, and there are other couple of little jobs too that I need to get on with. So we will see what transpires. Okay, bye.